issued by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives that would criminalize private firearm sales. Biden's latest effort to unilaterally curtail our constitutional rights is completely illegal. It is a dramatic escalation of his tyrannical abuse of authority. Throughout the years, Congress deliberately recognized the legality of private firearm sales by non-dealers. Congress even went so far as to narrow the statutory definition of dealer to prevent the ATF from unlawfully suppressing the private transfer of firearms. Joe Biden is trying to change that through regulatory redefinition, executive edict, and workarounds designed to evade our Constitution. He has completely disrespected and disregarded the democratic process. He has violated the separation of powers intended by our founding fathers to preserve the consent of the people in matters of government. On April 19th, the ATF published its new rules subjecting hundreds of thousands of law-abiding gun owners to presumption of criminal guilt for engaging in the constitutionally protected private sale of firearms. We will not let Biden continue his tyrannical abuse of power. His war on our Second Amendment rights must be stopped. Throughout our country's history, private citizens have bought and sold firearms, and their freedom to do so is guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. With today's lawsuit, it is my great honor to stand up to protect our constitutional rights from the out-of-control federal government. My message to Joe Biden yesterday, today, and forever is this: come and take it. And as some of you might know, that's from ancient Greek, but it's also from 1835, the Battle of Goliad, for the Texas independence. Thank you to our colleagues from Louisiana, Mississippi, and Utah, and thank you to Kansas and their coalition, and to our co-plaintiffs, West Verdell with Gun Owners of America, the Tennessee Firearms Association, and the Virginia Citizens Defense League. And now, I want to welcome my really good friend who's done an amazing job as the Attorney General of Kansas. I'm so pleased to have him in Texas, and really pleased to have him in a coalition to stop an overreaching Joe Biden who's trying to take away our Second Amendment rights. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. And I think it's kind of fitting that Kansas and Texas are leading these two coalitions of states. Our states have a long and storied history together. Indeed, the cowboy era of the 1870s and 80s was the driving of cattle from Texas to the railheads in Kansas at Dodge and Abilene and Kansas City. And that era of American history would not have been possible without the private ownership of firearms, which the cowboys carried, and the private trading of firearms, which the cowboys did among one another. So it's fitting that in defending these Second Amendment rights, Kansas and Texas stand shoulder to shoulder today. And as Attorney General Paxton mentioned, Texas is filing one lawsuit in the Northern District of Texas. Kansas is leading the other lawsuit, which we are filing this morning in the Eastern District of Arkansas. And this is so important that attorneys general stand for our Second Amendment rights. Biden's ATF has become infamous in its overreach. And what President Biden has done repeatedly is when he cannot get a bill through Congress, he does it through regulations. And so the Biden administration, as everyone in here should know, has attempted to close the so-called gun show loophole with statute, and Congress has rejected the Biden administration's statutory efforts every time. Now, President Biden is having the ATF do it through an administrative rule. And what they're doing is they're trying to redefine engaged in the business of dealing firearms. And the definition is so broad that, as Attorney General Paxton said, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of Americans will be engaged in the business of selling firearms without even knowing it. Let me give you a couple of examples. We were just on the gun range, and let's suppose that Attorney General Paxton and I are firing our favorite handguns, and then we trade, and we fire each other's gun, and I like his gun, and he likes mine. I say, hey, you want to just trade? And we trade guns. If my gun was worth $50 at the retail price more than his gun, Attorney General Paxton is guilty of a felony for making a profit in the trade of a firearm, a one-time trade where there wasn't even an exchange of cash, because he gained a quote-unquote profit from that one transaction. I can think of countless other examples. My wife thinks I have too many guns, and we have a rule. And the rule is that if I get a new gun, I have to sell one of my older guns. And I've done this at least 3 times. And according to the ATF's rule, and I have read this rule very carefully, I am engaged in restocking my collection of guns every time I sell one and purchase another, sell one and purchase another. I'm not a gun dealer. I'm just a guy who likes to hunt and likes to shoot for sport. But under this new rule, I would be a felon if this continued. So we are bringing this lawsuit for a couple of reasons. One is it's illegal. The Congress already defined what it means to be engaged in the business of dealing firearms, and occasional sales like these are not covered in the definition. So ATF is changing the statutory definition. That is illegal. They don't have that authority. Secondly, it's unconstitutional. Second Amendment protects our right to keep and bear arms, and the courts have said that you can't keep and bear arms unless you can obtain them and buy and sell them. And that is a Second Amendment claim that we will be bringing. We're also bringing a due process claim. Private litigants like this, or us individually, not as attorneys general, it's a fundamental principle of due process that you cannot have a crime that is so vague you don't know whether you're violating it or not. This definition is so vague, Americans won't know that they're violating it. So those are the 3 central claims. And lest anyone think that, well, the ATF's not going to do that. The ATF is going to be very careful about enforcing this. Well, then, if you think that, you haven't been watching the ATF over the last 3 years. Just in 2022, President Biden's ATF under Dettelbach, the director of the ATF, they announced that they were having a zero-tolerance policy. They are closing down gun shops all across America at a higher rate than at any time in the last prior 15 years. Texas has had the most gun shops closed by this aggressive ATF. 11 were closed in 2022. Kansas is in second place with 8 gun shops closed, and we don't want to be in first or second place in this competition. But the bottom line is the ATF is going aggressively against gun shops for what would routinely be considered paperwork errors prior to President Biden. It would have resulted in prior to Biden, it would have been a friendly phone call from the ATF agent for the region to the gun store owner saying, hey, your paperwork's not right. Could you please refile it? They would do it, issue resolved. Now, with this zero tolerance policy, they're coming in and shutting down perfectly law-abiding gun stores, and they're going to take the same attitude with this new regulation, which is why we are suing to stop it, and we intend to obtain a preliminary injunction if the judges agree, and stop this from going into effect.
Thank you. It's really a shame that General Kobach has no passion for this issue.
Yeah.
So Wes, I didn't tell you about this, but if you want to say a few words, we'd love for you to address the...
So I'm Wes Verdell with Gun Owners of America. I am the Texas State Director for GOA. We are extremely grateful to be standing here right now with the General. General has, over the years, has done some amazing work in the Second Amendment sector for us. We really appreciate what you've done. We actually have a hearing today in the Fifth Circuit that you filed, Paxton versus Dettelbach, and we're looking really forward to see the result of that. We are facing an ATF that is targeting FFL holders and gun owners. I go around the state. This is my job. I travel around the state talking to FFL dealers. Many of them are aggravated at what has happened to them. They've had the ATF weaponized against them in many ways. Normally, ATF would come in and do a real simple search, look through their paperwork, make sure that everything's good. If there was something that they had mistakenly done, they would correct it and move on. Now the ATF is going in looking for any mistake they have as an excuse to take off. FFLs, gunsmiths that we've talked to are extremely frustrated, and the ATF continues to put pressure onto law-abiding citizens. We have a Second Amendment. It's guaranteed to us in the Constitution. That Second Amendment is a restriction on the government. It's not a restriction on the people, and it's not a right for the ATF to come after citizens, what they're doing. Me and my friends, we shoot all the time. We trade guns, just like was talked about. Anyways, it's a thing where it's normal for us to maybe sell a gun, and often I'm kind of limited to how many guns I'm allowed to possess currently in my household. And so a lot of times I will sell a firearm so I can go buy another one. I shouldn't have to become an FFL to do that, or I also shouldn't have to become a felon or somebody who's doing something illegal for doing a right that was already guaranteed to me and a law that was already guaranteed to allow me to do that. So we're extremely grateful at Gun Owners of America to be standing up here with both of y'all. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the fight that y'all have done.